Later today, Italian tennis player Yannick Sinner will play against German tennis player Alexander Zverev in the Australian Open men's singles final in 2025. The winner will be presented with the Norman Brookes Challenge Cup. But do you know who Norman Brookes was? Norman Brookes was a stylish and dapper tennis player. He had a driver's cap ever present on his head. He wore a button down sweater, pressed white pants, and pristine white shoes. It was a debonair look, but Norman Brookes had a good looking tennis game to back up his good looking appearance. Until Norman Brookes arrived on the scene, the Wimbledon Gentlemen's Singles Championship was a closed fraternity for everyone except those of the United Kingdom, which at that time consisted of England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. In 1907, the Australian became the first non UK based player since play began in 1877 to win the Wimbledon Championships. Norman Brookes' triumph was resounding and dominant, a 6-4, 6-2, 6-2 victory over Arthur Gore. It provided some solace for Norman Brookes, who had lost the 1905 final to one of the fraternity's more decorated champions, Laurie Doherty, 8-6, 6-2, 6-4. With that 1907 victory came another first at Wimbledon. The left-handed playing Norman Brookes became the first southpaw to win a Wimbledon title. He had an unorthodox game, using both sides of the racket for both his forehand and backhand, and employed a serve that twisted, spun, and skidded on the grass surface away from his opponent. It took 7 years, but Norman Brookes captured another Wimbledon title in 1914, this time ending the 4 year reign of New Zealander Anthony Wilding 6-4, 6-4, 7-5. The First World War suspended play at Wimbledon from 1915 to 1918, and when play resumed in 1919, Norman Brookes was again in the final, losing a tough match to fellow countryman Gerald Patterson in straight sets 6-3, 7-5, 6-2. Outside of his success at Wimbledon, Norman Brookes played for the Australian National Singles Championship only once in 1911, but throttled compatriot Horace Rice 6-1, 6-2, 6-3, making him perfect in his Australian Championship wins. He played 9 sets and he won 9 sets. This is the interesting part. The men's singles trophy is named after Norman Brookes of the Australian Open, but Norman Brookes himself only contested the Australian National Singles Championship once, and he won it when he contested it in 1911. Norman Brookes won 4 major doubles championships, 2 at Wimbledon and 1 each at the US Nationals and Australian Championships. His 2 Wimbledon titles came alongside Wilding in 1907 and 1914, providing him with championships in both singles and doubles in both years. He and Patterson needed 5 long sets to defeat Americans Vincent Richards and Bill Tilden at the 1919 US National Championships, winning 8-6, 6-3, 4-6, 4-6, 6-2. His last doubles crown came as a 46-year-old elder statesman at the Australian Nationals in 1924, a routine straight sets 6-2, 6-4, 6-3 victory alongside James Anderson over Pat O'Hara Wood and Patterson. Norman Brookes spent virtually his entire amateur career playing on the Australasian Davis Cup team, which consisted of Australia and New Zealand. He played 39 matches between 1905 and 1920 and compiled a 28 wins to 11 defeats record. That mark included leading Australasia to 5 Davis Cup championships in 1907, 1908, 1909, 1914 and 1920. The 1907 title was the first for Australasia, a 3-2 win over the British Isles. Norman Brookes was not just a tennis player, he was also a great cricketer, bowler, and golfer. Norman Brookes became Sir Norman Brookes, that is, he was knighted in 1939 in recognition of service to public service, and Sir Norman served as president of the Lawn Tennis Association of Australia for 29 years from 1926 to 1955. His retirement drew a huge headline in the 30th June 1955 edition of the Sydney Morning Herald. During the First World War in 1914, Norman Brookes served as commissioner of the Australian branch of the British Red Cross in Egypt. Since 1934, the men's singles winner of the Australian National Championships and later the Australian Open since 1969 is presented with the Norman Brookes Challenger Cup. Who do you think will win in 2025? Yannick Sinner or Alexander Zverev?